y'all. Okay. Let me get right here. Let me move this out the way. Alright. Turn this down. Alright, y'all. Welcome back. Welcome back. Alright. Another episode on Dissect Dialogue. Y'all should know me by now, if not experience. But y'all should know me by now. You know the name, you know the face. If not, welcome. Now, I know y'all probably looking at me like, why you got on the jacket in the house? I don't know if y'all been outside lately, but it's getting a little bit arctic outside. Okay? Don't mind me if I like wearing hoodie. Plus, I don't want to be on camera on TikTok. No, I'm not afraid of camera busts. It's just, I gotta be professional. So, that's what I'm doing. Anyway, but week's been alright. I'll say alright. I try to ignore all the nonsensical shit that be going on, like the shit with Jada, whatever, being pushed down our throats every time on the timeline. Like that's annoying. I'm like, I can't even scroll on my phone without seeing her. I was about to say ball. Let me stop. I was about to say, let me not take that. But y'all get my point. I'm tired of seeing this lady on my goddamn phone screen. I'm tired of seeing her. I'm tired of seeing Krishan. I'm tired of seeing sexy red, man, sir, that. I'm tired of it. I don't want to see it no more. I'm done. I had a whole bunch of that stuff. But also some good stuff. I saw some dope movies that I want to check out. This one movie that's coming out, The Boy and Heron, I want to see that. American Fiction, I just saw the trailer for that. That looks good. And I'm thinking, do I want to do a review on some of these movies? I'll think about it later on. But that's not the meat and potatoes of this time of discussion. But these are just some sidebar kind of moves just to, spread out what's been going on around the week. The real nucleus of tonight's convo is I found out something. I was looking at this old broadcast, right, and they were talking about different generations, right, and this is I think they came up with this topic a few months ago. Everybody knows millennials, right? That's Gen Y. And then there's Gen Z. Technically, I'm Gen Z, but I'll get to that. So, I'll tell you my perspective. So, being considered a Gen Z, there's some things I can kind of relate, being in the digital age, kind of some stuff I missed that I didn't see from older generations, etc., that they probably experienced. They probably remember 9/11 to the T. I was 4 when it happened, so I vaguely remember it, right? They remember certain wars that happened. I remember certain wars too, but they probably had Gulf War, the whole Desert Storm thing. Some probably grew up in a crack era, things like that. We didn't. So we grew up in heroin and prostitution era. But anyway, there was that. So they came up with a study, and they were saying a certain group of individuals that was born a certain year has a mixture of both the millennial and the Gen Z. And they aptly named them because they keep on recreating and remaking shit. Zillennials. Basically what I mentioned there, basically the cusp of millennial and Gen Z. Their parents are usually the latter half of baby boomers to the beginning of Gen X, which, if you think about it, kind of makes sense. They call them Generation Jones, which is a mixture of boomer and X, and then just Gen X. They say I'm getting tongue-tied. Zillennials, they say, from early childhood or infancy during 9/11, they was the first cohort to experience adolescence post 9/11. Like I said, I was 4 when 9/11 happened, so I guess I kind of get it. They said the majority of the cohort came of age during the 2010s with, I don't know what the UK Brexit referendum is. Okay, U.S. presidential election of 2016, and they said the COVID pandemic, which is fake. Zillennials experienced the digital revolution. Yeah. Of the 2000s and 2010s, navigating mobile LTE internet, cell phones, and mobile devices and smartphones. Zillennials code switch between generations, have high levels of digital literacy, and are more likely to self-identify into a minority group. Now, this one was interesting. They say Zillennials are less wealthy, right, but more economically secure. Meaning that they may not have a lot of money per se in the bank, but compared to Gen Z, that latter, Gen Z, us millennials, we can keep a job. Whereas not, and it's not to shame the younger Gen Zs because I'm technically a part of them too. They don't really. But here's the problem with that, right? I think the problem is in the way how it's set up. I think the way this is structured, every generation is like, in a way, it's kind of similar, but they have like little differences. But the problem is every generation before the one after thinks they're better than them. Thus it creates this sort of butting of heads as this like who's lazy, who's hardworking, who's smarter, who's dumb, who's capable of cheating, who's not, like stupid shit. Which religion do you support? All this stuff. We fought in this war. Y'all never fought in wars. It's like it's annoying. It gets kind of counterproductive when you think about it because not every generation is going to experience the same thing. Hence, there wouldn't be such things called progression, right? And the funny thing is, the same generation, and I noticed this too from, because my parents, like they said, is Gen X. They were both born in 75. They were called the latchkey kids. I remember my parents saying that sometimes when their parents would, go off working, they would have the house to themselves. They didn't have no babysitters. They grew up on staying in the house. Somebody comes to the door, don't open it. So, because of that, they had some free time. In this case, too much free time in their hands. So, and not to mention, people say Gen X is the MTV generation. I say that too, but I also say Gen Z is the hip hop. I said Gen X, excuse me. Gen X is the hip hop generation as well. When I say hip hop generation, hip hop was, they were. I mean, punk was kind of, anti, establishment, but hip hop was more rebel-like. If that makes sense. Yeah, they were more rebel-like, kind of rebels without a cause, kind of thing. With NWA and all these mafioso rap stuff being pushed out and everything, which is what I really want to talk about. I mean, is there really a generation divide? Because I look at Gen X as the most. I mean, boomers and silent generation. They got their thing on the side. Millennials, Gen Z got their thing on the side, and then us millennials, we got a little bit of both. We're hybrids. I think Gen X in particular is probably the most contradicting of the generation because, and I'll get to the boomers and all that later. But Gen X in particular, you got a generation that didn't listen to their parents, but expect their kids to listen to them. and get mad when they rebel. Does that make sense? The rebels are getting mad that their kids rebel against them. And I noticed that a lot. Like, a lot of, you see the way these Gen Z kids is making money now. The shit that, they was probably doing for a hobby, playing games, football, sitting in the camera, recording, talking, probably doing a bunch of other stuff. They're making money off of that. So I think when they see that, it's almost like jealousy is a strong word, but they have they kind of put their nose up looking at them because they use lazy words like lazy, quitting. And, just because they figured out a different way to make money instead of working at a company 30 years, 80-hour weeks, right? Making peanuts doesn't make them lazy. It makes them smart. They figured out a way. And there's another thing. Gen X grew up with technology. If you really want to be technical, they was playing video games. They had computers. They had TV. So you could say the cell phones maybe because they had them things that look like C4 put into their head, pagers. But Gen X grew up. Y'all correct me if I'm messing up. Gen X grew up with technology, right? Like I said, Gen X is basically the parents of majority Gen Z. So they grew up with technology. They were technically the first adults that figured out. They pretty much saw the come because Google just turned 25 recently. So they pretty much saw the creation of Google, working the World Wide Web and AOL. So they know all about technology. It's not like they just woke up and was like, oh, what's this new thing? They knew. Some of them probably late teens figuring this out. But because they see kids younger than, way younger than them making money off it and being able to figure out different streams of income, now all of a sudden they frown upon them. They call them lazy. They say they now again, we're objective up here. And from my experience too, looking at some Gen Zs, technically being a Gen Z myself, even though I'm an old Gen Z, I always say that. Some of the Gen Zs, that latter 2000 range, kind of entitled. Not to say that generation before them had some sense of entitlement too, but we're talking majority. A lot of them want shit. It's like instant gratification. So you got that problem, right? You got a lot of kids thinking they know shit, but they don't really, right? They want to get this, that, and the third, but they won't want to work hard to get this, that, and the third, right? They want to speak their mind, and which is also who's raising them as well. So got to take that into account. You got that to worry about. They want to, talk this shit, say whatever, yada yada yada. But then when you challenge them, it's almost like they don't want to listen. So it's a mixture of that. So yes, Gen Z does have some sense of entitlement where they want something quick, fast, and in a hurry. And you can tell by what's being pushed out, certain, not to say that songs were 2 minutes back then too, but everybody wants everything faster and nobody wants to, I'd say 10, 15 years ago, people would kill to see a movie like Oppenheimer. That's like, those epics, that's like 3 hours. But now it's like, everybody wants, as long as it's like action based and, superhero type stuff, nobody's going to sit down nowadays to watch the movie that long with people actually communicating. which is another problem too, which I think is what's going on. And again, what happens outside has to happen in the home. A lot of Gen Zers don't know how to communicate. That's a major problem too. It's like, I see it all around. Like, even though, like I said, and I keep reiterating just to prove a point, even though I'm technically a Gen Z, I'm still in that zillennial category where I still remember some stuff for what millennials did, but at the same time, I still know a little Gen Z stuff, so I can kind of flip flop bounce, right? I see these kids nowadays, man. It's like, unless it's like some frivolous nonsense, they can't really carry a conversation. Now, don't get me wrong. Some people are uncomfortable with eye contact. I know. I get it. But I mean, when you really want to like engage with somebody, just a regular, nobody knows how to do that. I mean, they just look at you down. They look down all the time like this. Sometimes on my phone, I see it in the mall. People in the mall, just staring at the phone. Don't even, no manners, none of that, right? But like I said, however they act, someone's got to be raising them. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I said Gen Z are the children of the boomers and Gen X. At least the latter. No, excuse me. Yeah, especially the latter Gen X. Right? So, let me make sure I'm saying this right too. Rebel generation. And then you got children of parents that didn't really show emotion like that. You got that in the mix. So you got the children against the silent generation. They didn't believe in showing real emotion. Then the boomer, whatever, they were like the first. They were like, because it was the big. I think they were like the first party experimentalist group, right? They were trying out like drugs and acid and hippie type stuff, right? They were the elders of Gen X, the rebels, right? So you got the whatever hippies, blah 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 people. Then you got the rebels. They're raising Gen Z. They're raising the Gen Zers, at least the younger ones. Because sometimes the boomers, if they continue to have kids, sometimes they may have a kid that's just. Sometimes they could be too old to raise that person that's in Gen Z, and then in a way they kind of raise themselves. So you got that problem. And another issue with the generation you have is we don't really live by the whole, passing on, the game to help the next generation. Nobody does that no more. Everything always has to have a price now. You see it online. They have all these snake oil salesmen trying to give out courses, but like you gotta pay to do it. Like I'm not gonna pay you $1,000 a year to sell ice. I just learned that on the street. Like it's pointless that everybody's just all these generations like warring against one another. It's like say one thing, but then it's kind of like when parents always used to get pissed at you for trying out like weed, right? Remember when your parents got mad that you was smoking for the first time, or when you was having sex for the first time? Remember when they was pissed at you, or they made it seem like you was like down a wrong path or something? Come to find out, there's probably doing way much, like so much crazier shit. And Gen X can talk about all this. Oh well, we didn't grow up where it was safe spaces and trigger warning. Now, even though I do kind of agree, some of the Gen Zs is kind of soft at times, but Gen X is kind of soft too. You know, fight and flight ring a bell. You know, where if you want to have a point to say, or if you want to speak your mind, you're ready to kill somebody. But then when there's some stuff that you need to hear on your faults, you're ready to. Well, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I never did that. Well, my mom did that to me, so you should be okay. So you got that problem. The point I'm trying to make is that you can't shit on the next generation by doing something that you don't like because usually when people don't like what a person does, it's usually a reflection towards them. Either wishing you want to be them or wishing you could have did better. I think that's what's happening a lot. Then you get so mad at the younger generation that you don't want to lift them up. You want to keep them down. And that's the people that's up in, Senate, House. You know how old those people are in like Congress? They were like teenagers back like Jim Crow days. But they're making laws. Why? Because they know the people that actually want equality and fairness get up is going to destroy their whole way of life. So they keep those certain people up in that position till they're dead. And that's exactly what's wrong with this generation divide. They don't want to uplift. It's almost like a war against different generations. This generation is beefing with this one. This generation beefing with that one. It's like a never-ending cycle. When really, my philosophy is that nobody knows more than the next man, no matter how old or young. You can learn. That's what a lot of the older generation doesn't get. They think they can't learn something from somebody younger just on the fact that they think they're younger. Now, be as it may, again, some of the younger generation thinks that they know something because they may have seen it on TV or they looked it up from Google or YouTube, even though they can make up shit every day. But it still doesn't negate the fact that you can still learn something from them. You can learn something from anybody. I mean, from any walk of life. It doesn't matter what their class is, what their race is. You can always learn something from everybody. And I think that's the problem with most people. What's going on? Final thoughts. I believe that in order to have a functional society, we have to understand that not everybody's going to know everything. Every generation is different. We all grew up a certain type of way. It shouldn't matter what we did when we were younger compared to what this generation did when they were younger. We should all learn how to respect one another's differences and how we were raised and how we came up. Because it's never ending brawlers saying this generation is soft. Well, y'all were too toxic. Y'all allowed stuff to happen. It's like at some point it gets to a point where it's like, you're beating a dead horse. Every generation is going to be a little different. Okay? I'm pretty sure, I gotta find this, but there was like these quotes of like different famous people, and they were basically saying every generation was this before the next one came. And it's like this generation doesn't do this. Then it kept going. This generation doesn't do, and then this generation. It like kept going back to like 1800s where they're saying the same thing. It's all a joke. Like I don't understand why people don't get it. Every generation is not going to be the same. Exactly. There's going to be some stuff that's a little similar and some stuff that's a little different. That's the way of life. You think cavemen was talking about, I don't know, that amoebas had it a certain way compared to us back then. Like they don't care. Like nobody cares about the comparing and contrasting. Everybody has, you know, the different ways of thinking, different walks of life. But should every generation have knowledge of the past? It reminded me of this one clip of this HBCU, and they were showing they were about to play Busta Rhymes. Now, of course, I wasn't thinking because I got to think, okay, this is college. This is probably 18 to 21-year-olds, but at the HBCU. But thinking about who their parents are, I would expect them to know who that is exactly because, and I was gonna go without bringing, race into this, but especially in our community, uh, we don't really know how to cherish people that's before us because we're so into what's happening now, which is not nothing wrong about that. But at the same token, the same way you can remember all these other people, certain figures that probably didn't do anything special for us. I mean, it's just kind of because you see other background demographics, whatever, they respected, certain individuals of the past, whether artists, certain figures, they knew certain things. Whereas because this generation is so microwave, they just focus on what's next and not really focusing on what was before to go for. I'm not saying go back to the past, but just respect. And that's the point. Don't worry too much about the past so much, but understand what they did and just keep it pushing. It's nothing that deep. You don't have to make it a big deal, making like a brawl about it. Have to go, tit for tat about who did what in this generation. Like it's null and void. You're not getting nothing out of it. It's like you don't gain anything from it. All you're doing is just empty words. That's all it is. And the crazy thing is that we're not even like this isn't even like really a big deal if you think about it. It's just hot air, basically. That's all it is. Damn, maybe I should have kept it on. Hold on. Should have thought about. And it's black too. I don't know why I decided to put a black hoodie on indoors, but yeah, man, just have to say that. Those are just my 2 cents on that. Do y'all think it's a generation divide with us? That we're kind of warring against one another about different stuff? That it's just constant headache and just constantly having to remind, people. It's like, oh, we're not lazy. It's just we grew up with this compared to y'all. Like, it can get annoying. I know. Now, I may have some differences with certain elders I talk to, but I never get all like, oh no, y'all had it easy, yada yada yada. Y'all probably had better stuff to afford. Which on that, I want to know how back then they was talking about everything was rough. I want to figure out how y'all was able to get $500 apartments and $20 Chinese food. That's what I want to know. Y'all want to talk about stuff that's easy. I want to know how the hell y'all was able to still get that and still complain about having to struggle. Either stuff was really bad back then, or y'all was lazy ones. But I'm not one to judge. But that's all my take on it. Let me know what y'all think. Is there a generation divide? Again, like, comment, subscribe. Uh, again, Spotify, Anchor, Apple, Twitter, iHeart, Amazon. I'm on all those. IG, everything. Make sure y'all follow me, share, support, do whatever, and yeah, just keep everything equal, not separate. I just felt that, but yeah. Either way, until next time, I'm gone.